One of the craziest things that you talked about in the book, which I had no idea that you had interaction with this individual, but it was just an example of what you're talking about, was actually Tiny Tim.
Mm.
And you had kind of shared some of the story and experiences that you had with him. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of go into that a little bit so we can understand how this kind of plays out.
Yeah, I struggled to put him in the book because I had such respect and a love for Tiny that it was very difficult for me. But I had to weigh out the possibility of helping people as opposed to maybe, I don't know, tainting, tarnishing his name, which I don't think it did. So, yeah. So I was with Tiny from an early age of 17, 18 years old, traveling with him as front man, traveling around different events, playing with him. So I got to know Tiny pretty well traveling with him. And I don't know, because at that time I didn't know what I know now. I knew
Mm-hmm.
something was going on. I just didn't understand what it was. But now
Yeah.
that I look back on it, I can kind of put it in a box and label it. Um, he had multiple personalities. I don't think he was programmed. I don't think there was some intention, but I'm not going to say there wasn't. I'm just going to say that I don't know that stuck its ugly head up and looked at me in the face. What I saw was a man who had been persecuted, humiliated, possibly bullied. A lot of stuff going on probably in the childhood, and I put that in the book. I don't want to go in details on it. And I knew more than I put in the book, so I had to be very
Yeah.
careful. But because of his upbringing and background, he struggled a lot spiritually, as many of us do, of trying to identify who God really is, who we are in God. And that's one of Satan's intentions is to manipulate and distort our view of God and who we are in God. If he can do that, he's pretty much has the job done that he seeks to do. And that's kind of what Tiny struggled with. He would, with a Bible in one hand and a Jack Daniels in the other, this man could put away 2 or 3 6 packs and a fifth of whiskey without even blinking at night.
Wow.
And then he would get up and preach the gospel, you know, 7, 8 hours out in the hallways of the hotel and my front of my hotel room. And at that time, I was a young guy. Uh, I was out there with the women. I'd find a good-looking girl and bring her back home, back to the hotel room, and he would be there all night long as I was in the hotel room with the girl, and he'd be preaching hellfire and brimstone outside the door. Which I could respect that. The problem with Tiny is he had his own sex addiction.
Mm-hmm.
He liked young girls. And so what he had, and if you'll walk through me on this because it's very sensitive and I want to make sure I explain it and treat it with the dignity that I think that he deserves,
Yeah.
is when you are there's a thing called toxic shame. Toxic shame isn't just shame. This is a deep, deep shame that leaks into the soul and touches the spirit. Okay, this toxic shame happens to us, and it's so detrimental and so painful that what we do is we set out to find a person that we can reenact the situation with that we went through when we was a kid that created the toxic shame, hoping this time it's a different outcome, hoping we can either fix it or we can justify it or we can possibly even seek retribution against it. But in any case, none of it works because what it does, after we complete it, it drives us into a deeper, deeper hole of toxic shame. So you got the toxic shame. You see a situation where you can plug into something or someone and relive that situation. You get a high off of it. So you go up here, boom, it doesn't work. You crash and go even lower than you were before. Okay. So what I saw with Tiny is what I see in a lot of people with sex addiction is they are trying to deal with their with the humiliation, with the toxic shame put upon them through sexual misbehavior or whatever that might be. And so they seek out to have a sexual encounter, thinking uh, that's going to solve. It's like taking a pill, a medication to ease your pain, but then you sink down lower. And so that's what I saw in him. And it distorts your vision of God, because on one hand you're preaching the Bible, the other hand you're running around with young girls, and you go, well, the two don't fit together. Well, he's trying to figure out who God is. He's hanging on to his spirituality. Meanwhile, he's dealing with this other damaged part of him, which gave him a multiple personality. So he probably had 2 or 3, maybe 4 different personalities that I could identify with.